How many times do I have to forgive? Those kinds of questions are the questions we ask when we want to have just a box of obligation, if you can imagine it. A box of obligation that if we do everything that's involved inside the box, then once we get those things done, we can do really whatever we want. Those are what religious questions are. They happen all the time at my dinner table with my kids because they'll be served something that they no longer really want to eat. And the question will become, how many bites do I have to have until I can have dessert? Is it 2, 12? How many are we going to do here so that I can do what I really want to do? Or that favorite youth pastor question, when I'm making out with my girlfriend, how far can I go with her? Like, how much can I touch and where do the feet belong? Like, what can I get away with there? Or the favorite pastor question, when I give, do I need to give off the net or the gross of my income? What sort of a number that's going to get God off my back? What is he expecting out of it so that I can give him his stuff and then get to the stuff that I really want to do with my money? How many times do I have to forgive? How many times do I have to go through this full cycle of she sins and I forgive her? She sins, I forgive her. When can I transition to she sins and I get bitter? Or she sins and I remind her every year at Thanksgiving for the next 20 years of what she did back in 78 because I haven't forgotten it yet. How many times do I have to forgive? The question sounds very sterile. Just give me a number. How many times? It's based on obligation. How many times do I have to? And it sounds very religious. How many times do I have to forgive? It sounds cold unless you've been hurt. Unless you're someone who's been wronged again. Unless you've been the punchline of someone's joke and you got embarrassed again, I have to forgive them. Unless someone took your idea and called it their own again. Unless someone told you that they would not drink that or go there or watch that and they did it again and again. Unless you've been lied to or betrayed or deceived or embarrassed again, well, then that question sounds a whole lot more like the way Peter actually asks it. Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? It's not sterile if you've been hurt or wronged again and again. And so Peter offers to Jesus 7. I think hoping that Jesus might round down to 5, because 7 is a lot. I forgive you for being harsh in your anger. I forgive you for being harsh in your anger. I forgive you for being harsh in your anger. I forgive you for being harsh in your anger. I forgive you for being harsh in your anger. I forgive you for being harsh in your anger. I forgive you for being harsh in your anger. It gets hard after 1. 7 times, Jesus? No, 77. And you don't expect me to go through 77 of those. You probably can recognize what Jesus intended with that number, that we are to be people who forgive. Period. Followers of Jesus forgive. We forgive. And we forgive. And we forgive. The problem with religion is that it seeks out this box of obligation for the sake of being released to self-sufficiency, self-actualization, selfishness. Just tell me what I have to do so I can get on to what I really want to do. That's the problem with religion. Just show me what I have to do so that I can really do what I want. Judah had a big problem with religion around 600 BCE. If you remember from church history, it was 587 that that Babylon rolled in, destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple. They have about 13 years left. But they have a significant problem with religion. And the problem is that they have this temple, and they have this scriptural history that says God has made irrevocable promises to them, that as long as they can see that temple, if they can walk around the city and they sort of have it in their sights, then they have this promise, this guarantee that God is with them, and that really nothing can touch them. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter how they treat people. As long as they can sort of work their way so they can see it, yep, the temple's still there. God's still on his throne. We're going to be okay. They would sing about it in Psalm 132, that God's made his presence there. They remember this great promise that God made to King David, and they held on to it with this death grip that as long as we can see this building, we're going to be all right. They were very preoccupied with the activities of what we would call the cult, what you say, how you say it, what you do with your body. And around 600 BCE, they had very little concern with what they did. They were much more concerned with the right words than they were with the ethical demands of the covenant, what God expected of his people. They just figured he would always be there. That's the way religious people act. And so Jeremiah makes this note that having the right words said at the right time in the right place is what in the vernacular in sort of 2017 we would call empty superstition. He just sort of listed it out. The temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. Eugene Peterson writes, standing in a church and saying the right words or singing the right words doesn't make you holy any more than standing in a barn and neighing makes you a horse. It's actually really helpful to me. That's sort of where I get my spiritual insight. Okay, that I understand. Okay. It was a real religious problem for Judah, that they were treating people badly and then coming to church and expecting God to not care. So Jeremiah is a good prophet, one who felt deeply the words that he would say. And Jeremiah was a courageous prophet, like many of you. And he stationed himself in the place where everybody would have to hear, where things could go badly if they disagreed. You can read this story also over in chapter 26. And at the end of chapter 26 of Jeremiah, he almost gets lynched. People don't like what he's going to say. He gives them a command. He gives them a warning. He tells them, amend your ways and your deeds. Don't trust in deceptive words. When he's talking about amending their ways and amending their deeds, he's not talking to them about greater sincerity in worship or piety or having sounder doctrine. And this is what he says in verses 5 through 7. For if you truly amend your ways and deeds, if you truly execute justice one with another, if you don't oppress the sojourner, the fatherless, or the widow, or shed innocent blood in this place, if you don't go after other gods to your own harm, then I'll let you dwell here in this land that I gave to you. He encourages them to do the work that you are doing, to look out for those who are forgotten, as we've heard several times, the least, the lost, the last, to speak out when violence is done against the innocent, to call attention to self-destructive hankering after false gods, money, power, wealth, prestige. Jeremiah says, if you will change and look out for who you're not looking out for, if you will do the work that you today are doing, then God will relent the plan that he's on. He invites them to not trust in deceptive words. And if I could read verses 8 through 11 to you, it says, you behold it, you trust in deceptive words to no avail. Will you steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, make offerings to Baal, and go after other gods you've not known, and then come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say we're delivered, only to go on doing all these abominations? Has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your sight? Behold, I have seen it, declares the Lord. I've seen it. Quite simply, they would do a daily round of breaking the Big Ten. Jeremiah lists out commandments 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then every weekend they would flock to the temple to claim protection of God over themselves and over their city, having ignored everything that they've done all week, turning it into a den of robbers. If you've read any Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys in your life, you know what the den of robbers is for. It's where the bandits hide out while they're done sort of pillaging all the people around them. It's where they feel safe. This was a place where they would feel safe with total disregard for all that they had done during the week. And Jeremiah says that doesn't work. You've come to a place where God is one who loves you and wants to change and transform you, but he's not safe. He's not safe. He sees you, and he longs to change you. These are sincere religious problems, presuming upon God's kindness, assuming that he does not care how we act, forgetting about those whom he most watches out for, and not using our resources and platform and leverage to serve them. It was a problem in 600 BCE. We know it's a problem for the church today. It's one of the reasons why we gather to be strengthened in grace for the work that we've been given to do. The problem of religion is that it seeks this box of obligation so that we can get on to what we really want. As we leave, I want to give you the challenge of grace. The challenge of grace is that it actually wants to metastasize into every square inch of our soul. What grace demands is coherence. Grace demands transformation. Grace demands that we would be the kind of people who realize that we have been forgiven much, so we will forgive much. Grace demands that we would be the kind of people who love because we have been loved. Grace demands that we would look for those who are lost and forgotten and at the margins, because one who saw us lost and forgotten on the margins found us. That is the work to which we have been released. It's the work that you do. We are grace because grace metastasized its way into every square inch of our soul. And so you will go back to the work God has given you to do as metastasized grace and as people who forgive. One of the things that I love in the stories you've told is that you have done so much work to understand what you've been forgiven. It's the way you can do the work that you do. You've worked to understand how God has set you free, and you've worked to be able to articulate the story, this is what God is doing to transform and change me. But with great compassion as a pastor and a fellow pastor to many of you, I know that you go back to work where you will have to forgive people a lot. You will have to forgive the people you serve for not doing what they said they would do, for taking you for granted, for saying things that hurt your feelings, for saying things that are just wrong. You will have to forgive over and over. And you will have to forgive families, your family, their families, families that have let them down, dads and moms who've been awful, brothers and sisters who have not been careful. You will have to forgive. And you will have to forgive government leaders who don't cooperate, who don't give you the permits that you need, who don't release funding for good work. You will have to forgive church leaders who are maxed out and sometimes don't seem to see the work that you're doing. You will have to forgive church leaders who can't be every place that you need them to be and can't support you in all the ways that you want. You will forgive your coworkers. You will forgive the people who you don't know. You will forgive strangers. You will forgive over and over, and some days you will ask at the end, how long will my brother or sister sin against me and I forgive? So go into the world as metastasized grace, people who forgive in the work that you do. And in that you will bring the light of Christ to dark places. And you will be grace to people who long for it. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.